Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This is episode number 185 of the All Around Growth Podcast, a show that provides insight and tools to build the life and homestead of your dreams. My name is Rob Kaiser and I am your host. Before we dive into the fodder for discussion, I want to provide some dialogue about why I do what I do and why I'm doing that today. I've been struggling. All right, I'm gonna get real today. I've been struggling a little bit lately. I've got some health issues going on, some work stressors. There are some loved ones in my life who are also experiencing some health issues and some work stressors, much along the same lines. And oftentimes when I feel compelled to, do this show, I try to have content that's uplifting, motivational, inspirational, which is why I've gone to these devotionals and begun reading from them and talking about them and utilizing them as fuel for the motor that is this show. Keeps it going. And sometimes we need to do a little maintenance on that motor. And one of the ways in which I'm doing some maintenance on my proverbial motor is through the growth and development of my spiritual life, through mindful integration of prayer into my life. And if that's something that rubs you the wrong way, please use the word meditation, and I will try to interchange those words. But as I speak, this morning I was thinking about how I was going to proceed with the topic of today's show, and I have an app on my phone. It's the Bible app. And I've been setting reminders to pray. Oftentimes I don't see them, or I just, I see them, but I dismiss them. I've been trying not to. So I did this morning. And it was good. It was an emotional experience, this meditation. I've also been doing it in the evenings, on occasion utilizing a guided meditation. And as I thought about all of that this morning, I decided that I would reference the book Strength for Today and read from that. So I picked it up and gave it a look. And wouldn't you know it, the reading of the day sure seemed appropriate. Today's September 1st, 2021, and we read about dark nights. We begin by reading from Psalm 17, or from the book of Psalms, chapter 17, verse 3. You have tested my heart. You have visited me in the night. You have tried me and have found nothing. I have purposed that my mouth shall not transgress. That's Psalm 17, verse 3. La noche oscura del alma, the dark night of the soul. That's the name of the poem written by St. John of the Cross, a 16th century Spanish poet. Written while St. John was in prison for trying to reform his monastic order, The Dark Night represents the difficulties and trials we experience on the road to heaven. Dark Night also pictures the isolation we feel during times of spiritual tests. We sometimes lie in bed at night surrounded by darkness, longing for sleep but consumed with our thoughts and questions. The psalmists, especially David, were candidly honest about their literal and spiritual dark nights. David made good use of his sleepless nights, crying out to God for relief and answers. Psalm 22, verse 2, and Psalm 42, verse 8. And he replied on the natural order of things to remind him that, quote, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning, close quote. We read that in Psalm 30, verse 5. If you are in the mindset of your own dark night, use the time wisely. If there are tears, let them water the words you pour out to God, remembering that joy comes in the morning. If you are in the midst of your own dark night, use the time wisely. If there are tears, let them water the words you pour out to God, remembering that joy comes in the morning. Sometimes in life, things are appropriately timed, and sometimes we refer to that as coincidence. Other times, we refer to that as synchronicity. Synchronicity is an idea that was first introduced to me by an author by the name of James Redfield, who wrote a book titled The Celestine Prophecy. That book was given to me as a gift by my friend Dan Muslin, an old high school friend. We ended up spending some time together in college. And he gave that to me when I was going through a dark night of my own. Around the age of 19 or 20. He would come over and spend a lot of time with me and sit with me and assure me that it was all right. I was still young, still processing a lot of things, trying to deal with epilepsy. Fell into some times where substance abuse was an easy way to deal with the emotions that I felt. And Dan helped me deal with all of that during the times when I simply couldn't sit around and abuse substances, when I actually had to live life on life's terms. And he gave me this book, and I read it, and I read it again, and again, and again. And I look forward to going through all of these boxes now that I'm settled in a home, in a place where I'm hoping to eventually die. My parents and I are comfortable and happy here, knowing that there's a strong possibility that we're living in the place where we may die. And I hope to go through all of those boxes and find these old books, further cultivate these memories, share these stories in the form of a podcast like I'm doing now. And one of the reservations that I've had lately with the podcast and experiencing some of these dark nights in life on account of medical conditions, challenges with relationships, struggling with trying to maintain a good diet. One of the things that I'd been struggling with in this podcast is that I wanted to make sure that it was a real, authentic representation of who I am and what I am. And when I listen to so many other podcasts, I feel as though they are very confident in the direction that they are following in their trajectory, and I personally am not. You know, I want to make that very clear. I'm not some I don't have it all figured out. I don't have anything figured out. And when I listen to content, I'm rather selective about what I listen to, and when I listen to it, and how I listen to it as well. And if it's not something that's worth my time, I won't listen to it. And I oftentimes find myself questioning, is this worth your time? I mean, is it worth your time in listening to it? Is it worth my time in producing it? Now, what's interesting is that, you know, during the season, and when I say it's okay, before I even go, what's interesting is that during the season, it's not like a lot goes into the production of this podcast. It's me in my truck on my way to work. I take the MP3 file, I email it to myself, I upload it, I input some notes, much of which is copy-pasted. The whole process on a daily basis takes me about 15 minutes at the most of post-processing to get this thing up. It's a little bit, now that's what I do in the season when there's daylight, when I'm driving during daylight hours. It's a bit more challenging to reference these devotionals and these books in the dark. It's a little easier when I sit down in the mornings and craft my notes and email the notes to myself, because I'm referencing them off a secondary phone, my work phone, and not only is it a little bit easier to see in the dark with the phone on dark mode and what have you, but I feel as though the episodes that I did in the winter time when I started were a little bit better, of a little bit higher quality. And I questioned myself. I questioned why I was doing what I was doing with these devotionals and reading them. And I expressed that. I also got some feedback from people saying, hey, no, what you're doing with those books and winging it, in a sense, is good. We like that. That's kind of cool. It's unique. Go with it. So I have been. And I hesitate because one of the things that I've thought about is we're going back into the season where, in order to do this in the way that I'm hoping, I also thought about maybe finding some sort of email devotional that I can easily reference instead of the books. And that's highly likely, and I might look into that. But I thought about, is there a better use of my time in the mornings than assembling show notes for a podcast to the day job? I mean, can I take that half an hour or whatever it was, 45 minutes, whatever it was that I was spending on that time to actually spend on a project and work through some of the items that are on my already what's a laundry list of projects and notes. But it grows, and oftentimes things just don't really seem to get done. There's not a lot of progress, or at least I'm not satisfied with the progress. So what I find myself wondering or questioning is, what am I doing with this? And I alluded to that yesterday, and I think that it's important to point out that, I think about all of this, especially in these times when I'm feeling challenged, especially in these times when I'm going through or experiencing the proverbial dark nights. Now, this book, Strength for Today, written by David Jeremiah, is a Christian devotional. And it was not really my intent to turn this into a Christian-oriented podcast. However, this has been a big part of my life lately, and that's the reality. And I share it with you because it's content like this that helps get me through my own personal dark nights. And I'm hopeful that this, along with many of the other things that we talk about in the show on a day-to-day basis, will do exactly what we set out to do with the objective of the show, which is provide insight and tools to help us build the lives and homesteads of our dreams. And it's not all rainbows and unicorns. The reality of life on life's terms is that we have to equip ourselves with the means necessary, tools to get us through the dark nights. So remember, if you are in the midst of your own dark night, use the time wisely. If there are tears, let them water the words you pour out to God, remembering that joy comes in the morning. All right, my friends, that is it for today's episode. Today is Wednesday. It's September 1st. Fall is around the corner. It's hard to believe, but anyways, we can talk about fall another day. If you like what you hear and you want some consistent updates when there's news for the show, we've got a Telegram channel. It's a broadcast channel with updates only, primarily links to episodes when they are dropped and anything relevant to the show. But if you're interested in a group chat with other audience members and myself, you can do that as well. We're there on Telegram at t.me/allaroundgrowth. If you have any questions or feedback for me, any show topics or anything you'd like to inquire about, you can drop me a line personally at allaroundgrowth@gmail.com or Telegram group at t.me/allaroundgrowth. I hope that this episode was of value to you. It, ironically enough, was of value to me in talking all of this out and sharing the experiences with you of the morning thus far. And it has been of value sharing the experiences with you over the past few months for the duration of the podcast as well. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of it. I appreciate it. And I look forward to catching up with you tomorrow. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.